Millionaire CEO leaves everyone confused. A loving father translates and reveals the shocking truth. The lobby of the Melbrook Hotel was not merely a room, it was a statement of dominance carved in marble and gold leaf. It smelled of white lilies, old money, and the distinct crisp scent of air conditioning that cost $3,000 an hour to maintain. For Celeste Davenport, it was the throne room of an empire she hadn't built, but was condemned to rule. At 24, she was the youngest CEO in the hospitality world, a title that came with a corner office, a legion of lawyers, and a loneliness so profound it felt like a physical weight pressing against her chest. Today, the weight was winning. Celeste stood near the central fountain, a monstrosity of Italian stone depicting Neptune taming the waves, and felt the familiar, terrifying constriction in her throat. It started as a buzz in her ears, low and static-filled, like a radio tuned between stations. Then came the heat. Not the pleasant warmth of a summer day, but the searing, dry heat of a desert she hadn't seen in 15 years. The smell of lilies vanished, replaced by the acrid stench of burning rubber and jet fuel. She adjusted her blazer, the royal blue fabric suddenly feeling like a straitjacket. She smoothed her denim shorts, trying to ground herself in the texture of the fabric, but her fingers were numb. The guests around her, women in pearls sipping high tea, men in suits discussing mergers, began to blur. Their voices stretched and warped, sounding like sirens. The sirens, the evacuation, the smoke. "Ms. Davenport?" It was Jean-Luc, the concierge. His voice was tentative. "Are you quite all right? You've been staring at the water for 10 minutes. Celeste turned to him, but she didn't see Jean-Luc. She saw a soldier in fatigues shouting at her to run. The panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. She tried to speak, to say, "I'm fine," but the English words wouldn't come. Her brain had rebooted, defaulting to the operating system of her childhood trauma. "Wainabi?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Where is my father?" "Pardon?" Jean-Luc stepped closer, concern etching his brow. "La Tatracuni," Celeste shouted, backing away, her heels clicking frantically on the marble. She bumped into a waiter, sending a tray of crystal flutes crashing to the floor. The sound was like a gunshot. Celeste screamed. It was a raw, primal sound that shattered the polite atmosphere of the Melbrook. She fell to her knees, covering her head, curling into a ball. Al-Nar Kadima, Wain al-Mifta. The fire is coming. Where is the key?" The lobby descended into chaos. Guests gasped and retreated. Phones were raised, the black eyes of cameras recording the billionaire's breakdown. "Security!" Jean-Luc yelled, his professional veneer cracking. Miller, the head of security, burst through the side doors. He was a thick-necked man who wore his suit like armor and his authority like a bludgeon. He saw a threat to the hotel's image, not a woman in pain. "Grab her," Miller barked to his team. "Get her out of sight, now." 2 guards moved in, their movements aggressive. They reached for Celeste, who was sobbing now, rocking back and forth, lost in a nightmare of smoke and sand. "La! Ibtidani!" she shrieked, slapping at their hands. "No, get away from me. She's on drugs," a guest muttered loudly. "Look at her eyes." Ryan Walker was 30 feet away, polishing the brass railing of the grand staircase. He froze. He was 29, but in his blue uniform with the yellow rubber gloves tucked into his belt, he was ageless, classless, invisible. He was just the janitor. He knew the rhythm of this hotel better than the architects. He knew which pipes rattled when it rained and which floorboards creaked on the 3rd floor. And he knew that voice. He dropped his rag. The polished tin clattered, rolling away unnoticed. He watched Celeste, the untouchable ice queen of the Melbrook, crumble into a terrified little girl. He heard the words she was screaming. They weren't gibberish. They were the frantic pleas of a child who thinks she has been abandoned in a war zone. "Where is the key? The fire is coming." Ryan felt a phantom heat on his own skin. He remembered the diplomatic quarter. He remembered the day the embassy fell. He remembered the girl with the blonde pigtails who used to sneak him chocolates through the fence because his father was just the maintenance man, and hers was the ambassador. He saw Miller grab Celeste's arm roughly, trying to haul her up. "You're making a scene, Ms. Davenport," Miller hissed. Something inside Ryan snapped. It was the snap of a tether that had held him to his quiet, safe, invisible life for 3 years. He vaulted over the brass railing he had just polished, landing heavily on the marble floor. His work boots squeaked. He didn't run. He marched, a focused, kinetic force cutting through the confusion. "Let her go," Ryan said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had a timbre that cut through the murmurs like a knife. Miller looked up, sneering. "Walker, get back to your mop. This is executive business." Ryan didn't stop until he was standing between the guards and Celeste. He was taller than Miller, broader in the shoulders from years of hauling engines and fixing boilers. He imposed himself physically, a blue wall of denim and cotton. "I said let her go," Ryan repeated, staring Miller down. "You're terrifying her. She's having a psychotic break." Miller spat. "We need to restrain her. She's having a flashback." Ryan corrected him coldly. He turned his back on Miller, a dismissive move that made the security chief flush with rage, and knelt down beside Celeste. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She looked at him with wide, unseeing eyes. She didn't see Ryan the janitor. She saw another shape in the smoke. Ryan peeled off his gloves slowly, showing his hands. They were rough, scarred, stained with oil, but steady. He lowered his head to her level. He didn't touch her. He simply breathed, in and out, inviting her to match his rhythm. Then, he spoke, not in the flat American accent of a Queen's laborer, but in the melodic guttural tones of the Levant. "Celeste," he said softly, "Ismaini, Ana Ryan, Anahuna. Listen to me, I am Ryan, I am here." Celeste stopped rocking. Her eyes darted to his face. The sound of the language was a lifeline thrown into the abyss of her panic. "Ryan?" She whimpered in Arabic. "Al-Nar, al-Bab Muglak." "The fire. The door is locked." "La Yujad Narhuna," Ryan promised, his voice a low rumble. "Al-Bab Maftu, al-Mifta Ma'i, Nahnu fi New York, Nahnu fi Aman." "There is no fire here. The door is open. The key is with me. We are in New York. We are safe." The transformation was miraculous. The tension drained from Celeste's body as if a plug had been pulled. The hallucinations of the burning embassy faded, replaced by the cool marble and the concerned face of the man in front of her. She blinked, her blue eyes focusing. She saw the name tag. Ryan. She saw the blue uniform. "Ryan?" she whispered, switching to English. Her voice was hoarse. You understood me?" "I understood," he said. He offered her a hand. "Can you stand? The floor is cold." Celeste took his hand. His grip was firm, calloused, and incredibly warm. He pulled her up effortlessly, shielding her from the prying eyes of the lobby with his body. He was a human shield against the judgment of the elite. The silence that followed was deafening. The guests stared. The staff stared. Miller looked like he had swallowed a lemon. "What the hell was that?" Miller demanded, stepping forward, trying to regain control of the narrative. "What kind of gibberish were you speaking to her?" Celeste straightened her spine. She wiped a tear from her cheek with a furious, elegant gesture. The CEO was returning, but she was still leaning slightly against the janitor, drawing strength from him like a battery. "It wasn't gibberish, Miller," Celeste said, her voice gaining strength. "It was Arabic, and he just did your job for you. He de-escalated the situation while you were busy trying to manhandle me." Miller turned his glare on Ryan. "You speak Arabic? Since when does a maintenance grunt speak fluent Arabic?" Ryan looked Miller in the eye. "Since I lived in the Middle East for 10 years, before the war." Celeste looked at Ryan, really looked at him. The pieces were clicking together in her mind, the name, the eyes, the specific dialect he had used, the one from the capital, not the rural areas. "You're Ryan Walker," she breathed. "Your father was Thomas Walker, the head of facilities at the compound." "He was," Ryan said, looking down. Mentioning his father still hurt, a dull ache in his chest. "And you're Celeste Davenport, the girl who used to break her bicycle chain on purpose so I'd have to come fix it." A small, watery laugh escaped Celeste's lips. "I can't believe it. You've been here at the Melbrook. For how long?" 3 years, Ryan said. 3 years, she repeated, shocked. "And you never said anything?" "I walk past you every morning." "You walk past a uniform, Celeste," Ryan said gently, not accusingly, just stating a fact. "People don't look at the person inside the blue shirt. It's the way of the world." "I want to talk to you," she said, gripping his arm. "Privately. Away from." She gestured vaguely at the staring crowd. "I have to finish the stairs," Ryan said, glancing at his abandoned rag. "And Miller is going to write me up for unauthorized guest interaction." "Miller?" Celeste said, turning to the security chief with eyes like ice. "You are going to clear this lobby. You are going to confiscate any recordings made by the staff. And if you write up Mr. Walker, you can find a new job by sunset. Do I make myself clear?" Miller's face went purple. "Crystal, Ms. Davenport. Come with me, Ryan." Celeste said, pulling him towards the elevators. Please. Ryan hesitated. He looked at the polished gold doors of the elevator. Going up there meant crossing a line. It meant leaving the safety of the basement, the anonymity of the uniform. It meant entering her world, a world that had chewed him up and spit him out once before. But then he looked at her hand on his arm. Her fingers were trembling slightly. She was still afraid. Okay, he said. Let's go. As the elevator doors closed, shutting out the noise of the lobby, Ryan realized he had just made the most dangerous decision of his life. He was ascending to the penthouse with the owner of the hotel, and he had just revealed the one thing he had kept hidden for 15 years. He was not just a janitor. He was a witness, and witnesses are dangerous things to have around. The elevator ascent to the penthouse was a transition between two universes. They left the gravity of the ground floor, rising past the ballrooms, the executive suites, the layers of wealth stacked like a wedding cake, until they reached the sky. The silence inside the mirrored box was thick, filled only with the hum of the machinery, a sound Ryan knew intimately, having oiled the cables himself last month, and the ragged breathing of the woman beside him. Ryan watched Celeste in the reflection of the brass doors. She had composed herself, smoothing her hair, buttoning the royal blue blazer that served as her armor, but her hands were still shaking. She wasn't the CEO right now. She was the survivor. When the doors slid open, the penthouse apartment sprawled out before them, a vast expanse of white leather, chrome and floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking Central Park. It was breathtakingly expensive and utterly soulless. It looked like a showroom, not a home. There were no photos on the mantel, no clutter on the tables, just emptiness and a view of a city that didn't care. Drink? Celeste asked, walking straight to a crystal decanter on a sidebar. She didn't wait for an answer. She poured 2 generous glasses of amber liquid. Her hands clinked the glass against the bottle. I'm on the clock, Ryan said, standing awkwardly near the entrance. His work boots felt heavy on the plush white carpet. He felt like a stain in this pristine environment. You're on my clock, Celeste corrected, turning to him. She held out a glass. Please, I don't want to drink alone. Not after that. Ryan stepped forward and took the glass. Scotch? The expensive kind. My ex-husband left it. I hate the taste, but I like the burn. She took a large sip, grimacing, then exhaled sharply. God, Ryan, I haven't spoken Arabic in years, not since the therapy sessions ended. It just poured out of me. Trauma has its own language, Ryan said quietly. He swirled the liquid in his glass but didn't drink. It hides in the body. In the muscle memory. Today something triggered it. The fountain, Celeste realized, eyes widening. The sound of the water hitting the stone. It sounded like the fountain in the embassy courtyard, the one where we used to hide from the guards. And the smell, Ryan added. Jean-Luc was wearing a cologne, sandalwood and musk. It's the same scent the ambassador, your father, used to wear. Celeste stared at him. You notice that? I notice everything, Celeste. It's my job. I fix things. To fix them, you have to understand how they work, or why they break. She walked over to the window, looking out at the gray skyline. My father. He never spoke about the evacuation. He forbade me to talk about it. He said we were Davenports, and Davenports don't dwell on the past. He rebuilt his fortune, bought this hotel chain, and pretended the Middle East never happened. But I remember the sirens. I remember running to the helicopter. I remember losing. She stopped, her hand going to her neck, touching the empty space where a necklace should be. You remember losing the locket, Ryan finished for her. Celeste whipped around. How do you know that? Ryan set his glass down on a coaster. He unbuttoned the top pocket of his blue work shirt. It was a slow, deliberate movement. His fingers, usually so nimble with tools, felt clumsy under her gaze. He reached in and pulled out a leather cord. Dangling from it was a small, tarnished silver key. It was old, the metal darkened by time and sweat. It wasn't a key to a door. It was the key to a small, intricate jewelry box. Celeste gasped. The sound was sharp, sucking the air out of the room. She dropped her glass. It hit the carpet with a dull thud, spilling the amber liquid, but she didn't even look at it. Her eyes were locked on the key. You kept it, she whispered. She took a step toward him, then another, as if pulled by a magnet. All these years? I found it in the sand, Ryan said, his voice rough with emotion. Near the landing zone, after your chopper took off. I was running after it. I wanted to say goodbye. I saw something glinting in the dust. He took the cord off his neck. It was warm from his skin. He held it out to her. I kept it because it was the only piece of you I had left, he admitted. And because I promised. Remember? The night before the evacuation? Celeste reached out, her fingers trembling as she touched the key. The memory washed over her. 2 children sitting on the roof of the maintenance shed under a sky full of desert stars. The smell of jasmine. The distant sound of the city. I'm scared, Ryan, the 10-year-old Celeste had said. Don't be, the 14-year-old Ryan had replied, puffing his chest out. I'll protect you, I promise, no matter what happens. You promised you'd protect me, Celeste said, tears welling in her eyes. But you didn't come with us. They wouldn't let you on the helicopter. Staff wasn't priority, Ryan said simply. There was no bitterness in his voice, just a weary acceptance of the way the world worked. My dad and we had to take the convoy, the trucks. It was a long trip to the border. I heard about Thomas, Celeste said softly. My father told me years later. A heart attack? Ryan looked away, his jaw tightening. That's the official story. The convoy was shelled. The stress. Yeah, his heart gave out. We buried him by the roadside in Jordan. I was 15. I became the man of the family in a single afternoon. I'm so sorry, Ryan. Celeste reached out and took his hand. The contact was electric, skin on skin. The billionaire and the janitor connected by a shared ghost. And then we came back to the States. Mom was sick. The government pension was a joke. I worked. Construction, mechanics, sanitation. I learned to fix anything that was broken because I couldn't fix the one thing that mattered. My family falling apart. He looked at her intensely. I saw you in the magazines, Celeste. The princess of hospitality. The billionaire prodigy. You looked so perfect. So cold. I was freezing, she admitted. I still am. This life, it's a performance. I wear the blazer. I give the orders. I married a man who loved my bank account more than he loved me. I divorced him when I realized I was just an asset in his portfolio. I live in this glass box, Ryan. I have 1,000 employees, but I haven't had a real conversation in 5 years. Until today. She squeezed the key in her hand, feeling the bite of the metal. Why didn't you tell me you were here? Why suffer in the basement? I'm not suffering, Ryan said, pulling his hand back gently, re-establishing the boundary. I have a dignified life, Celeste. I pay my bills. I read my books. I ride my bike. I didn't want to be the charity case from your past. Oh look, it's the poor boy from the desert. Let's give him a manager job he didn't earn. You're smarter than half my board of directors, Celeste exclaimed, frustration rising. You speak Arabic. You understand engineering. You have a moral compass they couldn't even dream of. You're wasting your potential scrubbing floors. I am earning my living, Ryan said firmly, his eyes flashing. There is no shame in honest work, Celeste. My father taught me that. The floors I clean are clean, the pipes I fix stay fixed. I sleep well at night, do you? The question hung in the air. Do you? Celeste looked down. No, she whispered. I take pills to sleep, and even then I dream of fire. Ryan's expression softened. He looked around the empty, sterile penthouse. You need to get out of here. This place, it's an aquarium, you're drowning in air. And go where? She laughed bitterly. The gala is tomorrow. The board meeting is on Friday. My schedule is booked until 2027. To the bridge, Ryan said suddenly. What? The Brooklyn Bridge. Or the Queensboro. Somewhere with wind. Somewhere loud enough to drown out the voices in your head. He checked his watch. My shift ends in 10 minutes. I have my bike parked in the loading dock. A '78 Harley, blue, like the one your dad had before he became the ambassador. Celeste froze. Her father had a bike? She vaguely remembered a photo, old and sepia-toned, of a young man on a motorcycle, smiling in a way she had never seen him smile. He loved that bike, Ryan said. He sold it to pay for his first suit. He told my dad it was the biggest mistake of his life. I want to see it, Celeste said. The decision was made before she even thought about it. The urge to escape, to flee the glass box was overwhelming. Celeste, look at you, Ryan gestured to her blazer and heels. You're dressed for a boardroom, and well, look at me. I don't care, she said, kicking off her heels. She walked to her closet, a room the size of a studio apartment, and emerged a moment later. She had stripped off the blazer. She was wearing a simple white silk t-shirt tucked into her denim shorts. She carried a black leather jacket that still had the tags on it. I bought this 3 years ago, she said, putting it on. I thought maybe one day I'd be cool enough to wear it. Today seems like a good day. She looked at him, her blue eyes challenging him. Take me out of here, Ryan, please, just for an hour. I need to feel like I'm not just a CEO. I need to feel like Celeste. Ryan looked at her. He knew this was a bad idea. He knew Miller would be watching the cameras. He knew the rumors would start. But looking at the woman holding the key he had carried for 15 years, he couldn't say no. He had promised to protect her. Maybe protecting her now meant saving her from her own life. Okay. Ryan nodded. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his stoic features into something boyish and handsome. But you have to hold on tight. She vibrates a lot. It's an old engine. I'm not afraid of a little vibration. Celeste smirked, a spark of her old mischievous self returning. Let's go down the service elevator, Ryan said. If we go through the lobby, Jean-Luc might faint. They walked out of the penthouse, leaving the spilled scotch and the silence behind. As the elevator descended, carrying them down to the basement, the distance between them, the billions of dollars, the social strata, the years, began to dissolve. They were just two kids from the desert, looking for a way out. The loading dock of the Mellbrook Hotel was a cavern of concrete and echoing noise, smelling of diesel fumes and wet cardboard. It was the hotel's unglamorous gut, where trucks disgorged crates of lobster and linens, hidden away from the eyes of the guests. For Ryan Walker, it was the gateway to freedom, too. He led Celeste to the far corner, past the dumpsters and the idling delivery vans, to a designated spot marked with a faded yellow line. There she sat, a 1978 Harley-Davidson shovelhead, painted a deep midnight blue that shimmered even under the harsh fluorescent lights. It wasn't a showroom bike. It was a machine that had been loved, ridden, and rebuilt. The chrome was pitted in places but polished to a mirror shine. The leather saddlebags were worn soft. It looked like a beast sleeping. This is her? Celeste asked, her voice hushed. She ran a hand over the gas tank. The metal was cold. This is her, Ryan said, pulling a helmet off the handlebars. He handed it to Celeste. It was black, simple, with a few scratches. It's my spare. It might be a little big. I don't mind, Celeste said. She pulled the helmet on, fastening the strap under her chin. It muffled the noise of the dock. She felt insulated, protected. Ryan straddled the bike. He didn't look like a janitor anymore. In his leather jacket, worn over his blue uniform shirt, he looked like something out of an old movie. A relic of a time when men fixed their own problems with a wrench and a fist. He kicked the starter. The engine didn't just start, it exploded into life. Thump, 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 thump. The sound was visceral, a deep rhythmic heartbeat that shook the floor. It was loud, unapologetic, and raw. Hop on! Ryan shouted over the roar. Celeste climbed onto the pillion seat behind him. It was narrow. She had to press her body against his back. She wrapped her arms around his waist, her hands locking together over his stomach. He felt solid as a rock. She could feel the vibrations of the engine traveling through his body and into hers. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Hold tight, Ryan yelled. He kicked it into gear, and they lurched forward. They burst out of the dark tunnel of the loading dock and into the twilight of New York City. The transition was blinding. One moment concrete gray, the next a kaleidoscope of taxi yellow, neon red, and the darkening blue of the sky. Ryan didn't drive recklessly, but he drove with purpose. He wove through the gridlocked traffic of Midtown, the bike nimble despite its size. Celeste tightened her grip. She watched the city blur past. The tourists in Times Square, the suits rushing to happy hour, the steam rising from the subway grates. From the back of the bike, the city looked different. It wasn't a kingdom she had to rule. It was a living, breathing organism, and she was just a blood cell rushing through its veins. They hit the ramp for the Queensboro Bridge. This was it. The open air. Ryan opened the throttle. The engine roared, a defiant shout against the wind. Celeste closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sensation wash over her. The wind whipped at her leather jacket, tearing away the smell of the hotel, the stress of the board meeting, the shame of her breakdown. For the first time in years, her mind was quiet. There was no strategy to plan, no image to maintain. There was only the vibration, the speed, and the warmth of the man in front of her, Ryan, the boy who had fixed her bike, the man who had fixed her panic. They crossed the East River, the water below turning black as night fell. The lights of Manhattan began to twinkle on, a million artificial stars to replace the ones they had lost in the desert. Ryan took an exit in Long Island City, navigating down to a secluded spot near Gantry Plaza. It was an industrial area, quiet at night, with old railroad tracks embedded in the cobblestones. He pulled the bike up to the water's edge, facing the skyline directly. The United Nations building stood tall and glassy across the river, a monolith of diplomacy. He killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was sudden, filled only by the lapping of the river against the pilings and the ticking of the cooling metal. Ryan kicked the stand down and climbed off. He took off his helmet and shook his hair out. He looked at Celeste. She was still sitting on the bike, gripping the seat, staring at the view. "You okay?" he asked softly. Celeste took off her helmet and handed it to him. Her blonde hair was a mess, wind-blown and tangled. Her cheeks were flushed pink. She looked alive. "I forgot," she whispered. "I forgot what it feels like to move without permission, to just go. That's why I ride," Ryan said, leaning against the bike, crossing his arms. "In the hotel, I'm told where to go. Clean the lobby, fix the boiler, use the service elevator. On the bike, I choose the lane, I choose the speed. It's the only freedom I can afford." Celeste climbed off the bike, her legs a little wobbly. She walked to the edge of the pier. "My father built that hotel to be a sanctuary," she said, looking at the distant lights. "But for me, it's a fortress. I'm the queen, but the drawbridge is always up. I can't leave, and no one real can get in." "You let me in today," Ryan pointed out. "Because you didn't knock." She turned to him, a small smile playing on her lips. "You broke down the door." "I saw smoke," Ryan shrugged. "I reacted. Fire safety training." Celeste laughed, a genuine sound. She walked over to a rusted bollard and sat down, pulling her knees to her chest. "Tell me about your life, Ryan, the real version, not the summary. You said you read books?" Ryan sat down next to her, keeping a respectful distance. "Yeah, philosophy mostly. Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius. It helps." "Helps with what?" "With the anger," he admitted. He picked up a pebble and tossed it into the water. Plop. "You know, watching people like Miller treat me like furniture. Watching guests spend more on a bottle of wine than I make in a month. Sometimes I want to scream. I want to shake them and say, I am a person. I have thoughts. I have a history. But you don't," Celeste said. "You stay quiet. Because dignity isn't about shouting, Celeste. It's about knowing who you are when no one is watching. I know I'm good at my job. I know I took care of my mom until her last breath. I know I didn't let the world break me, even if it tried. That's enough. Most days." Celeste looked at him with awe. In her world, value was external. Stock prices, magazine covers, awards. Ryan's value was internal, forged in fire and tempered by hardship. It was unbreakable. "I envy you," she said. "Don't," Ryan scoffed. "I live in a basement apartment in Queens with a leaky ceiling. You have a penthouse. I have a cage," she countered. "You have a soul." They sat in silence for a long time, watching the ferries cut across the water. The connection between them was deepening, roots growing fast in the fertile soil of their shared trauma. "Do you remember the night before we left?" Ryan asked suddenly. "The real reason you were scared." Celeste stiffened. "I was scared of the war." "No," Ryan said gently. "You were scared because you heard your father on the phone. You heard him say he was leaving the staff behind." Celeste closed her eyes. Tears leaked out. I thought if I gave you the key to my jewelry box, you'd have to come back, to give it to me. It was a child's logic. It worked," Ryan said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the key again. He held it up to the moonlight. "I'm here. I came back." He took her hand and pressed the key into her palm. He closed her fingers over it. "You don't need a protector anymore, Celeste. You're the CEO. You're strong. You fired Miller. Well, threatened to. You survived the divorce. You survived the panic attack. You're not the little girl on the roof anymore." "I don't feel strong," she whispered. "That's because you're carrying the weight of the whole building," Ryan said. "Put it down for a minute. Just be Celeste." He stood up and offered her a hand. "Come on. If I keep the CEO out past midnight, the stock market might crash." She took his hand. She didn't want to let go. "Thank you, Ryan. For the ride. For the key. For seeing me. Always," he said. The ride back was different. The city was darker, the traffic lighter. Celeste didn't just hold on to him. She leaned into him. She rested her chin on his shoulder. She could smell the leather of his jacket, the faint scent of engine oil, and beneath it all the soap he used. It was a clean, honest smell. They arrived back at the loading dock just as the clock struck midnight. The spell was breaking. The carriage was turning back into a pumpkin. Ryan parked the bike. He helped her off. She handed him the helmet, her hair a chaotic halo around her face. "I should go up the service elevator," she said. "Sneak back in." "Probably best," Ryan agreed. He started to wheel the bike toward its spot. "Ryan?" He turned. Would you ride with me again? Not as a rescue mission. Just for us?" Ryan looked at her. He knew the risks. He knew Miller was somewhere in the building, plotting. He knew HR would have a heart attack. He knew they were from different galaxies. "Wednesday is my night off," he said. "I usually ride up to Bear Mountain." "Wednesday," she repeated, memorizing it like a contract clause. "I'll buy a helmet." Ryan smiled. "Good night, Celeste." "Good night, Ryan." She walked to the service elevator, pressing the button. As the doors opened, she looked back. Ryan was covering his bike with a tarp, tucking it in like a child. She stepped in and the doors closed. Down in the security office, Miller sat in the dark, the blue light of the monitors illuminating his face. He replayed the footage from the loading dock camera. He saw the hug. He saw the way Celeste looked at the janitor. He picked up his phone. He dialed a number from his contact list, a private investigator he used for special projects. "Yeah, it's Miller," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "I need a deep dive on an employee, Ryan Walker. Dig deep. I want the dirt. I want the juvenile records. I want the sealed files from Chicago. Yeah, the explosion at the server farm. Find it all." He hung up. He watched the frozen image of Ryan on the screen. "You want to play hero, Walker?" Miller whispered to the screen. "Let's see how she likes a hero with a criminal record." Miller leaned back in his chair. The game had just begun. And in the high-stakes world of the Mel Brock Hotel, the house always wins. Or so he thought. 2 days. 48 hours of suffocating silence had passed since the ride on the Queensboro Bridge. For Celeste Davenport, time had returned to its usual sluggish, agonizing pace. She sat in her office on the 45th floor, staring at a spreadsheet she hadn't processed in an hour. Her phone sat on the mahogany desk, silent. She hadn't texted him. She couldn't. The brief moment of freedom on the back of the Harley felt like a fever dream, a hallucination induced by stress and nostalgia. Reality was here. The quarterly earnings report, the legal team briefing, and tonight the gilded charity gala. Down in the bowels of the hotel, the reality was grittier. Ryan Walker was elbow-deep in a grease trap in the main kitchen. The heat was oppressive, smelling of stale oil and dish soap. He worked mechanically, his muscles moving with the efficiency of years of labor. But his mind was miles above in the penthouse. He checked his phone every 10 minutes, wiping his hands on a rag, hoping for a message that never came. "She's the CEO, Ryan," he muttered to himself, tightening a valve with a wrench. "You're the help. Don't be an idiot." But the memory of her arms around his waist, her cheek pressed against his leather jacket, was a ghost he couldn't exorcise. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. They were the only two survivors of a shipwreck that no one else remembered. The gala was an assault on the senses. The grand ballroom of the Mel Brock had been transformed into a winter wonderland in mid-July. White roses, imported from Ecuador at a cost that could feed a small country, cascaded from the ceiling. Ice sculptures dripped slowly onto silver trays of caviar. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the quiet desperation of social climbing. Celeste stood near the entrance, greeting donors. She wore a gown of liquid silver silk that clung to her frame like a second skin, backless and daring. Her hair was swept up in an intricate chignon, exposing her neck, and the lack of the necklace she usually wore. Instead, hidden inside her clutch, she carried the tarnished silver key. It was her talisman, her anchor. Celeste, darling. Mrs. van der Hoven, a woman whose face was pulled tighter than a drum, air-kissed Celeste's cheek. "You look positively radiant, but so tense. Is everything all right with the board?" "Everything is perfect, Eleanor," Celeste lied, her smile practiced and brittle. "Just the anticipation of the speech." "Oh yes, the legacy speech. We're all dying to hear it." As Eleanor drifted away, Celeste felt a hand on her elbow. It was Miller. The head of security was wearing a tuxedo that strained at the buttons, his face flushed with a triumphant heat. "Ms. Davenport," Miller purred, "we have a situation." Celeste stiffened. "What is it, Miller? Did a paparazzi sneak in?" "Worse," Miller said, his eyes gleaming with malice. "It's about your friend, the janitor, Walker." Celeste's heart hammered against her ribs. "What about him?" "We had a critical failure in the HVAC system directly above the stage. I had to call maintenance." Walker is up there now in the catwalks. But that's not the problem. Miller pulled a folded document from his inner pocket. While doing a routine background refresh, standard procedure for staff working near VIPs, I found something interesting, something sealed. I don't care about your background checks, Miller, Celeste snapped, turning away. He's a felon, Celeste, Miller whispered, dropping the formality. A corporate saboteur. He blew up a building in Chicago 5 years ago. Kincaid Industries. Did he tell you that on your little motorcycle date? Celeste froze. The room seemed to tilt. Chicago. Ryan had mentioned leaving Chicago. A building? He's a violent radical, Miller pressed, seeing his opening. And he's currently 20 feet above your head. I've called the police. They're on their way to arrest him for falsifying employment documents and endangerment. You called the police here? To my gala? Celeste hissed, fury warring with shock. I'm protecting you. Miller raised his voice, drawing looks from nearby guests. He's dangerous. Suddenly a screech of feedback tore through the sound system. The lights on the stage flickered. A figure descended from the service ladder on the side of the stage. It was Ryan. He was wearing his blue uniform, tool belt strapped to his waist, looking completely out of place amidst the tuxedos. He had fixed the AC unit, saving the guests from sweating, but as he stepped onto the stage floor to exit, Miller made his move. Stop him, Miller shouted to his security team. Grab him. 3 guards rushed the stage. Ryan didn't run. He dropped his wrench, it hit the stage with a heavy clang, and held up his hands. The music stopped. The conversation died. 500 heads turned toward the commotion. Ladies and gentlemen, Miller marched onto the stage, seizing the microphone. He was drunk on power. I apologize for this interruption, but security is paramount at the Melbrook. We have just apprehended an individual with a history of domestic terrorism who infiltrated our staff. The crowd gasped. A wave of whispers rippled through the room like a snake. Terrorism? The janitor? Ryan stood center stage, the lights blinding him. He looked out into the sea of darkness, searching for one face. He found her. Celeste stood frozen near the entrance, her silver dress shimmering. Is this true? A board member shouted from the front row. Who hired him? Miller pointed a finger at Ryan. Ryan Khalil, alias Ryan Walker, wanted in Illinois for the destruction of the Kincaid data center, an explosion that caused $3 million in damages. Celeste moved. She didn't walk. She glided, cutting through the crowd like an icebreaker. She ascended the stairs to the stage, the silver fabric of her dress flowing behind her like water. She walked past Miller, past the guards, and stood in front of Ryan. Is it true? She asked, her voice amplified by the microphone Miller was still holding near them. She wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking into his dark, intelligent eyes. I destroyed the center, yes, Ryan said, his voice steady, calm amidst the storm. Why? Celeste asked. Her hands were clenched at her sides. Because Kincaid was burying the safety reports, Ryan said, projecting his voice to the room. They built low-income housing complexes in the South Side using substandard wiring. They knew it was a fire hazard. They calculated that the lawsuits from the deaths would be cheaper than fixing the wiring. I found the memos. I tried to leak them, but they blocked me. So I went to the server farm at night. I set a charge. I melted the drives. I destroyed the evidence of their cost-saving measures, but I also destroyed the blueprints so they couldn't build the death traps. The room was silent, deadly silent. I didn't hurt anyone, Ryan continued. I made sure the building was empty. I waited for the police. I took the plea deal to keep the story quiet because they threatened to go after my mother's pension. I became a felon to save families from burning to death in their sleep. He looked at Celeste, his eyes pleading for understanding. I saw one fire take everything from me, Celeste. I couldn't watch another one happen, not if I could stop it. Celeste felt tears prick her eyes. It wasn't terrorism. It was heroism. It was the same boy who had promised to protect her on the roof, now a man sacrificing his future to protect strangers. He's a criminal, Miller shouted, breaking the spell. Officer, take him away. 2 police officers who had just arrived stepped onto the stage. No, Celeste said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command. Ms. Davenport, this man is. The officer started. This man, Celeste interrupted, turning to face the crowd, is the only person in this room with a moral code worth a damn. She reached into her clutch and pulled out the tarnished key. She held it up. My father built this hotel on a foundation of image, Celeste announced. He taught me that appearances are everything, that we hide our flaws, we hide our pasts, and we project perfection. But that's a lie. Tonight, the only thing that is real is this man. She turned to Miller. You fired? No. Miller, you're done. You're blacklisted. If I see you in my building in 5 minutes, I will have you arrested for harassment and defamation. Get out. Miller looked at the board of directors. They looked back at him with stone faces. They knew where the power lay. Miller threw the microphone down. It shrieked and stormed off stage, a defeated bully. Celeste turned back to Ryan. The police officers stepped back, unsure what to do. Ryan, she said softly, oblivious to the 500 people watching. You fixed the AC? Yeah, he half smiled, exhausted. It should hold. Good, because I'm done here. She kicked off her silver high heels. They slid across the stage. She stood barefoot, shorter now, looking up at him. I hate this dress. I hate this party. And I hate that I let you walk away 2 days ago. Celeste, Ryan warned, looking at the cameras. Everyone is watching. The stock price. Let it drop, she said. I'll buy it back cheaper. I don't want to be the CEO tonight, Ryan. I want to be the girl on the back of the bike. She held out her hand. Take me home. The long way. Ryan looked at her hand. Then he looked at the crowd, the shocked faces of the elite who had never seen a billionaire choose a janitor. He realized he didn't care about them. He took her hand. Let's go, he said. They walked off the stage together, hand in hand, the barefoot queen and the mechanic king. The applause started from the back, the waiters, the bartenders, the invisible staff who had watched the whole thing. Then, slowly, a few guests joined in. Then more. They exited through the service doors, leaving the gala behind. The cool night air of the loading dock hit them like a blessing. The blue Harley-Davidson was waiting in the shadows. Ryan didn't waste time. He fired up the engine. The roar filled the concrete bay. Celeste hiked up her silver gown. Bunches of expensive silk gathered in her hands and climbed on behind him. She wrapped her arms around his waist, burying her face in the familiar scent of his jacket. Where are we going? Ryan shouted over the engine. Diplomatic quarter, she joked, crying happy tears into his back. That's a long ride, he laughed. I've got gas money, she replied. Ryan kicked the bike into gear. They peeled out of the loading dock, the tires screeching slightly on the pavement. As they hit the street, merging into the river of New York traffic, Celeste reached into her pocket and felt the key. It wasn't a key to a box anymore. It was the answer to the question she had been asking for 15 years. Where is the key? It was right here, doing 60 miles per hour down 2nd Avenue, holding on to the only thing that was real.